Hello everyone. Today we are reviewing a book titled Atomic Habits. The book is about how do you build good habits and let go of bad ones in a more systematic and scientific way. It talks about human emotion and psychology and the interplay between the two in building habits and how does one take control of it. The author of the book is James Clear. The introduction by him talks about a serious sports injury that he had at a very early age and how he had to build solid habits to come back to normal life and lead a succeeding career. And that is what he has collated in his book. Moving on to the summary of the book is a very short book with a lot of ideas and concepts put throughout the book. Now, some of them are already known to us, and because we are always in the habit of trying to build new habits, better habits, etc., you might know a lot of these ideas already. Some of them are new and it is put in an interesting perspective. Breaking the title of the book, what does atomic mean? Atomic is small, the basic component. Hence, the author tries to say that if you have to make a change in your behavior or build a new habit, it can't be done overnight. Rather, you have to bring about a 1% improvement every day and repeat it over a period in time. This would give you a compounding effect in the behavior or habit. And another key point that he calls out throughout the book is that many of our goals or targets that we set or a new habit that we want to build is in terms of the outcomes that they deliver. Say for example, you would want to lose weight of 10 kgs or read a book or write a book, etc. Rather, you should focus on your inner self or your identity or improving the identity, which means that you try and become a better person or a better version of yourself rather than looking at the outcome in particular. Say for example, rather than saying that you're going to lose 10 kgs of weight, you would probably take a goal of becoming a fitter person, right? So that way you change your input processes and hence the outcomes automatically get delivered. Now, the core concept behind this book is the definition of how a habit is formed, right? The author talks about 4 key steps that are involved in the formation of a habit. First one is cue. You see a lot of signs or signals that entices you to do something or react to something, right? That is the first step, which is a cue. The second one is the craving for it. You have seen a cue, but it may not be as enticing or tempting as you would otherwise want it to be. But there are some things that you are very tempted to, right? So second point is craving. The third one is how do you respond to it? And the last point is what is the reward that comes out of it. So all of these are connected, and when you get a very good reward, you again go back and you build this thing again, because you know that if you respond to this in such a way, you'll get a very good reward, and hence the next time you see the same cue, you have a craving for it and respond to it, and you get the reward. So that becomes a habit. These are the 4 steps involved in the habit forming. Now, either to build a new habit or to let go of a old habit, the author talks about 4 laws which are dependent on these 4 simple steps in a habit forming. Now, what is the first one? He talks about making your cue. In order to build a very good habit, he talks about making a cue really obvious, right? And make your craving very, very tempting and attractive, and your response very easy, and your reward very satisfying. By doing all these 4, you will be able to build a good habit, and by doing the opposite of all the things, you would make a bad habit go away. Now let's just go a little deeper into each of these laws very quickly. First law is about making your cue very obvious. So what he talks about this is you have to ensure that whatever you want to build as a habit is signal driven. Say for example, if you say that you want to go for a jog, you can't just say that I will go for a jog tomorrow morning. Rather, you should be very, very specific about it. You should say, I will go for a jog at 7 p.m. in so and so park, etc. So the time and location makes these signals or cues very, very specific and particular, and hence the moment you see 7 o'clock, you will know that this is a time for going for a jog, and it becomes easy for you. And also, you also should set up your environment with a lot of cues around. Say for example, let's say that you want to have a lot of high fiber diet, right, or high fiber snack. Fill your kitchen dining with a lot of high fiber diet, so that you see that these items are there, it entices you automatically. Similarly, if you don't want to eat a lot of carbohydrates kind of food, don't buy them. Don't buy these snacky food or oily food or fatty food. Don't buy them at all, right? So and hence the queue is taken away from your vicinity, and hence you don't get a queue. So this is about making your queue really obvious and visible. Now moving to the craving part, we said second law is make your craving more attractive or tempting. So if you're building a good habit, the best way to do this is have a already existing habit or something that you love doing about, put your new habit next to it, alongside it, right? So that way it becomes very tempting for you to do your habit, because you know that next to that you will do this also, the one that you like already, right? This is called as habit stacking, right? You stack a good habit next to the one that you want to build as a new habit. And also we as human beings look for a lot of social acceptances, right? We want your friends to appreciate you, or a group to appreciate you, etc., and all of that. So try and join a group or a culture wherein whatever habit you're trying to build is a known behavior there, or a accepted behavior there. Say the whole phenomenon about the cult chain of gymming and workout sessions is basically built around this only, wherein you see a group of like-minded people working out together because you know that that's something you want to do, and the group embraces that kind of a behavior, right? So such kind of things will make your craving more attractive, right? So this is the second law. And the third law is about making your response very easy. So if you see, we as humans generally would like to have the highest rewards with minimal efforts possible, right? Our brains are tuned to that. So even if you see a good habit does not reward you immediately, right? Let's say you continue to do a workout or you jog, you won't see your weight loss going down significantly immediately. It's going to take some time. So the reward for a good habit is in long term, but it has no short term benefits. While in a bad habit, let's say you are binge watching or you're munching a lot of fatty snack, it gives you immediate reward, but the long term effect of it is very bad, right? So just the opposite. Hence we need to ensure that whatever good habits that we are trying to build gives you some kind of immediate gratification, or at least you fool your brain to have an immediate gratification. That way it gets stuck with you. Now how do we do this is that you have to ensure that whatever you're trying to build as a new habit is not a very grueling task. Say for example, if you're trying to run for a marathon, or you're making a marathon a habit, rather than running for it right from the start, you should make it a 5-minute activity or a very short activity. Build the habit for some time, and then over a point in time when you're very comfortable with it, this becomes a natural habit. Now the other point that you can use is using technology to aid you to automate some of these processes. Say for example, financial planning. Rather than making it a habit, you could use automatic financial planners that are available today, which will automatically move funds from point A to point B at the start of the month. These kind of things using technology will help you make the response for a certain cue or a craving very easy for you, and thereby our brain accepts such kind of behavior, and it becomes a habit, right? That is a Honda. The last portion is how do you make your reward very satisfying, right? Now if you run for a let's say for a 2-kilometer run, etc., you could put a habit tracker, right? Pasted visual aids pasted somewhere on your house, and keep tracking your runs every day. So that way, whenever you finish a run, you go mark it, you feel that you have done something really important, and you see that the benefit of your habit is showing up in the results. It may not show up in your physique already, but you know that you are tracking it, and you're able to successfully complete these runs over a period in time. That way it gives you a feeling of success, right? And the other point is you could bring about a accountability partner, say your spouse or a friend, who could penalize you in case you do not form a habit, right? So it's just a negative tone to this to make your response satisfying. You could penalize you if you don't respond in the right way, right? That way you could have an account wherein you keep debiting money from it if you don't generate the right response. And the other key point that he talks about is it is very, very important, even though you are not in the best of shape or you are not able to continue this habit, etc., rather than letting go of it completely, do something, be present there and try to do something in the minimum way possible. At least that way you have a continuous momentum happening, and that way the chain is not broken, right? That is the key point that he tries to convey. That brings us to the summary, end of the summary of this week. What are the key takeaways from this book? The habit forming should be treated as a process to improve oneself and be a better version of oneself, rather than focusing on the short-term outcomes. This improves your morale and it gives you a different kind of an identity, and thereby you hold on to the habit that you have started to build. Second point is, not all of us are perfect. You cannot expect somebody to continue a routine day in, day out, every day. So in case you take a break, rather than taking a complete break of and say that I will not do it again any further, just be present or do it in the minimal possible way so that the chain does not break. The last point is, it is always easy to follow a habit when you are in a good mood. The difficult part is when you have to continue the habit when you are in a very, very bad mood, and that needs a solid determination. So consistency is what makes any habit automatic, and to do that, exhibit your routine no matter with whatever intensity possible. With this, we will close the summary for this week. I'll catch up with you with another interesting book next week. Till then, goodbye.